Happy New Year, everyone! This is Caroline, and in today's video, I want to share the 10 cards that I created with the Spellbinders Card Kit for the month of December. Hey Foxy! So let's jump right into card number 1. For card number 1, I decided to make it a shaker card. I used the beautiful pattern paper that had this tapestry pattern on it, and I also cut out a heart shape out of white cardstock and embossed it with a 3D embossing folder. That embossing folder was from Crafter's Companion. And here I'm building just the shaker element, and I doubled up my tape foam to give it enough room. And I also cut out those little flowers, a few of the little flowers that came with the die in gold and in pink. And I will add this with the gold sequins that came with the kit and use this as my shaker filler. For my sentiment, I used one of the stickers from the sticker pad and stick that on the mirror cardstock, and then I cut it out with a little border and I embellished the card with some sequins. Now for the inside, I used the leftover from that pattern paper and cut out a little lacy shape that I had in my stash. I think this was also Crafter's Companion die, and just used it for the inside of the card. Okay. For the second card, I decided to make my own background. I used 3 different distress inks. This is the color Posy, and with a blender tool, I just made little circles or random circles on the paper. And here that's the color Salmon. It's like this orangey color. And I just blended this then with the color, that's the lightest color of those 3, that's Princess. And I just wanted some random circle-ly blurred background. And then I'm using a stencil. This is a Dina Wakley stencil, and with like a dabber tool and white pigment ink, I'm just dabbing that white ink through the stencil, and I'm trying to keep it pretty light. I don't want it not all very white. I just want it like almost like a fainted white, if you want. And then on top I'm using another stencil which has smaller circles. And here I am going over those other circles and make them stronger white, if you will. So the idea here is to make it look like almost like bubbles, dreamy bubbles. I have to dry this with my heat tool. And then I'm going again, making a little edge with a tan color. I think it's Palomino. Yeah, Palomino. Just to give it a frame. And then, as usual, I'm gonna rough up the edges. And adding some splatters with the Nouveau Shimmer the pink version of the Nouveau Shimmer spray. And then I'm drying this again with my heating tool. And those shimmers, the shimmer spray makes really little glittery sparkles on that background. Then I'm making a little 3D element out of those two ladies, the flower girl. And I'm using a circle that I cut out with the mirror cardstock that was included. And my goal is to make a little arrangement there with the flower girl. And underneath I'm adding the word dream. After attaching this together, I'm adding a little sentiment underneath that says live and grow. And then I cut out with the die that was included, or actually with the leaves that came out of the die. When I cut out the flowers, I used the leftovers and adding them to this card. And then I add stickles and glossy accent. And then I decided that something is missing, and I added those little flowers with the rhinestones as an embellishment to those leaves. Yeah, and that's the second card. Forgot to mention that I made my own card here. I didn't use one of the cards that came in the kit since I wanted it to be pink. So for card 3 I did the same. I used the other side. I had like a letter size card stock, pink cardstock, and I just cut it once and then folded it, scored and folded it, so I had two cards. Now for this card I am using 2 pattern papers from the kit, and I cut out a frame and attached the vellum behind it. And while that's drying, I am assembling my card base. I'm adding the green and then beautiful flower pattern, and adding the frame. And then I used the die cuts that were included, the house, the little house, and the sentiment, happiness found, the banner. And add a little flower and embellished this with stickers as well. I added 2 little butterflies and leaves. And this is card number 3. Card number 4. For this card, I'd actually taken one of the cards that came with the kit. Again, one of the pattern papers. I cut that to size. And I also fussy cut flowers out of the other sheet of the same pattern paper. Cut out the flowers. And then the other pattern paper, that was this texture, this basket texture. And I cut that just diagonally. Then I'm using the stamp from the stamp set and emboss it in gold. And I actually cut this always on my mind. I cut this off from a sticker that was in the sticker book, in the sticker pad. And then I attach this together Now I'm assemble the card base here, and it's going to be a horizontal card, and I actually rough up the edge, the diagonal edge of that other piece, and glued it on top, and I actually let that piece, I'm gonna let that overlap to the back. So when you have the finished card, you have the little triangle on the other side. I think that's add a little extra to it. Then I'm attaching 3D foam stickies to the flowers and arranging them on that diagonal line. And then I do the sentiment first, so I can see where I can put the flowers or the leaves. And here you see me arranging this, attaching this with foam, tape, and glue. And the idea behind it is, I always wanted it to be looking like the flowers hanging out of a basket, of a flower basket. Embellished it with a glossy accent, and here's the finished card. Card number 5. For this card, I decided to use the blue pattern paper, but I wanted it to have a few clouds. So I took a spongy wedge and my white pigment ink, and I just literally turned that sponge back and forth to give it the shape of a cloud. Then I took the heart that I had left over from card 1, and I am adding rose gold glaze from Wiki Booten, and I'm just layer this on there, really dabbing the stuff on top of it, so give it a little texture. And then I'm adding this, since this is still wet, like the glitz embossing powder from Recollection, and this is gonna make this whole thing look like glitter paper once I dry this, once I heat this up. And it's really sparkly. It has this holographic little glitters in it. So once that's dry, this will be added to the top first, because when the ink dried, it got a little, I didn't have it, I thought it's not wide enough, so I just added more clouds. And I also rough up the edges on this one. I also, with the pattern paper, since they are usually very thin, I always attach them before I work with them and use them as card base. I attach them to old sketchbook paper that I have, just to give it more, make it thicker. And for this card, I again used cardstock from my stash and cut myself a card, since I wanted the dark blue to contrast with the light blue. Here I'm arranging the die cuts. I used that cute little bear and the love die cut, and I add some flowers. And then for embellishment, I used the glossy accent and went over the stripes of the t-shirt and also all around. And then for final touch, I added a tree sequence, and this is the finished card. Okay, card 6. I guess this is the most labor intense card of all 10. And again, I used a cardstock, almost like a gray beigey color for my card. And I used the 3 pattern papers. And I thought that, and do you see me how I actually do this? I glue this on old sketchbook paper and let it dry, and that really gives this a good thickness. And I wanted to create a little scene here, and I used the stripes. I wanted them to be trees, like birch trees, and a little meadow. And then I cut out the fox with the other pattern paper that had this little beige, texture on it. And here you see me attaching the eyes. I had a hard time. I didn't really, couldn't figure out how to do the eyes. So I just went and cut out the nose twice and glued the nose in the back behind the eyes. I am not sure if this is the right way to do it, but I guess it worked. That's the finished fox. I thought it looked really pretty with this pattern paper, the body and the pattern paper. I'm using my micas here and just shading the fox a little bit, and also give him a little a few pinkish cheeks. And then I added also shimmer powder mica powder to the little butterflies. And by the way, the butterflies were leftovers from a kit. I think it was the last March kit. It was the Relax and Enjoy kit, I think. So I used those. And here I'm just using a Inktense pencil and make some marks into the white stripes to make it look like trees. And then I adding also some leaves with one of the leaf stamps, and add them there so it looks like little leaves from the trees. And then I also used the green pencil and filled out those leaves. And then since these are Inktense pencils, I use a little bit of water and I just blur the lines a little bit. And for the sentiment, I am stamping the You're Pretty from the stamp set. And I use vellum paper here that I ripped up. And I emboss it in gold. And I'm going to attach this to my front here. Then I'm adding my fox, and I also gave him a little glitter. That little flower is cut out of white glitter paper for a little sparkle. And then I'm adding also leaves and of course the flower, the buds, the little flower buds there, and the butterflies. And then I thought, I think I put in the sweet there. So it's like You're Pretty Sweet. And I'm roughing up the edges just on the top, and I'm attaching this to my card. And then I embellish this with Nuvo drops and some stickers. And of course my glossy accent for some texture. And yeah, this is a very pretty card. That's the card. Okay, card 7. Okay, for card 7, I really thought I loved this image, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. And then I was like, I'm just let it be as is, and I just added a little bit of script texture there to fill up that blurry space. And I'm just use distress ink. I think it's the moss or forest green. I need forest green, and then just added this to that paper. I think it gives it a nice texture. Then I'm adding some that's the white shimmer spray from Dilutions. Some drops there, and then I embossed the Your on the pink cardstock in gold, and also those 3 words on the light pink in gold. And cut those out. And I am not so worried about cutting this exactly in straight. I want it to be a little bit wonky. And I'm just attaching this image. And I also attached the butterfly from the die cuts. And I attached that butterfly almost like it's flying to that flower. And with 3D foam, I'm just adding my sentiment and the 3 words and a few sequins. Add some gloss there, and that's the finished card. Okay, card 8. For card 8, I'm using one of the white cards and have a piece of watercolor paper and some die cuts and the sentiment the sticker that I glued onto the gold mirror cardstock. Now for the watercolor paper, I'm using my embossing ink and use the flower stamp from the stamp set, and I'm going to emboss this in white. And then I am using my brush and just plain water and just go around those flowers and make it all wet. And then I'm using the pixie powders, cosmic pixie, magic pixie powders that have sparkle in them. And this is Midnight Sky. And I'm just moving the pigments around with my brush, making sure I'm not going into the flowers, staying around the flowers. That's the first layer, and then I'm adding gold to it, and I mix the gold with the black, with the dark, it's almost like a paint gray, if you will, and just adding more depth and gold. Then I'm going and put some, I think it's lava red, adding this on top of the flowers and just with water, and let that flow together with the background. And then I'm adding a little bit more pixie powder in black, and then I'm drying everything, and it's really, really shiny. It looks very pretty. attach this to my card. And I'm using the other flower girl and made a 3D element and added those flowers, the flower die cuts that look like, that match the stamps or the stamp. I always want this to look like a dress, like the flowers are her dress. And I'm just attaching this with glue. And I am adding also 3 little of the tiny flowers since I have them cut out and I thought I would look pretty on top there. And add my sentiment. And I'm just adding some Nuvo drops to the center of the flowers. And for final touch, I'm using again some of the sequins. And this is the finished card. Okay, card number 9. Again, here I'm using a card that I had in my stash, and I cut out that pattern paper with my wonky square die and a circle out of the other one with my wonky circle die. And again, I assembled a little fox. And attached this to my card. Then I used the leaves and arranged them in a wreath around this circle. And I did 2 layers, one in dark green and then one in a lighter green. And then I attached some flowers on the wreaths. And you will see that I made a little mistake here. I didn't pay attention to the direction of the card opening. And here you can see it's like, oh, oops, it's not the right way. So I decided, okay, I'm setting the fox just on the top left corner of it. And then I have, I'm using the dies for my sentiment, happy for you, and also one of the stickers again, and I attached that to, or glued it onto a gold mirror cardstock. And then I'm adding stickers and Nuvo drops to the wreath to give us more dimension, and here is the finished card. Okay, card 10. Alright. For this card, I used a Spellbinders die to cut out the frame. And then I pulled out all those beautiful flowers that came in the die cut set. And I actually cut away the white borders. My goal is to make a flower bouquet arrangement, and I always find it nicer to have to cut away the white border from the die cuts. For some reason, I think it makes it more natural, if that makes sense. So here you can see me how I arranging the flowers, and I'm lay this all how I want it, and then I just glue this on. I just left it in the video because I think it makes sense to see how I arrange it first. I always try to go with the opposite, and in the size, and have the smallest on top. I also wanted to add a butterfly and also the golden leaves. Now I wanted to use that big banner, what you just saw, but I found it was way too big, so I decided to make it a birthday card and just use that little sticker from the sticker pad, and again stick that on gold mirror cardstock, and then I start gluing everything together with 3D foam and my liquid glue, and I glue this all in place. And I'm adding here and there liquid glue and little pieces of foam tips where it needs it, and the butterfly I'm gonna attach with a glue dot, and I will add also those first I'm adding some white Nuvo drops and gold stickles for the inside of the flowers, and then glossy accent, and here you see how that's a finished card. And here are again all the cards. There's the shaker. Now for this set I really used a lot of my own cardstock to make my cards, because I love like cards that open up to the top. For some reason I just wanted to do it different this time. I think a lot of the cards are beautiful if you can just put them somewhere and stand them on a shelf or on a table, and I like those vertical cards that opens up to the top. I hope that you like this video and that you like my cards, and I had a lot of fun working with this kit. This is a beautiful kit. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next 12 kits with Spellbinders. I'm still a subscriber, and I just renewed, or actually I will renew now. I think in February it's gonna be 12 months, yeah. So I'm gonna leave you here now and wish you a beautiful day, and I hope I see you in my next video. Until then, bye.